Hi, my name is Beverly from the Art Barn. I had advertised a class called He is Risen for Thursday night. That's not going to work out, so I decided to do a video to post online so that you could do this at home with your own materials if you have them. I hope you do. You can paint on just about anything. You can paint on wood, you can paint on slate. This is one I did yesterday. Now if you're going to paint on wood or slate or some type of item, you could even do this on a rock, you would need to prepare your surface with an item called gesso, or other paint will work, but gesso is a paint made out of gypsum. It's thick. It's a nice covering for a background. So I covered the window of the tomb with the gesso first. I did not cover the tomb walls with the gesso because I wanted the texture of the slate to come out. Now, the wood, I did the same thing. I used the gesso on the window of the tomb, but I did not use gesso surrounding the tomb or on the inside of the walls. Gesso is a nice substance. You can refurbish a canvas with gesso as well. I've done it many times. It's a rather inexpensive way to make good use of the materials that you have. So maybe you have a canvas lying around home that you're not happy with the outcome or you have not hung. You can also cover your canvas with gesso and then paint over that, but it must dry thoroughly. Now, one thing that I want to show you on this canvas, even though it's a refurbished canvas with gesso, there's no staples here. And when I say canvas, I mean stretched canvas on board. The staples are in the back of the canvas on the board, and so they don't show if you hang it on the wall without a frame, which is very popular right now. I'm also going to share with you the references that I have. We're going to do our own take on this reference. It's not going to be a copy. This is the reference we're going to use, but we're going to add the arch of the window to it. If you'd like to take a screenshot, you may. Then, this is the same photo in black and white in order to see the values. See how light it is in the window and how dark it is on the tomb walls. That gives you the contrast that you need. And we're going to go by this somewhat, but it will be our own rendition. It will not be a copy of the photograph. The first thing I'd like to mention is that with a painting, you always have a background, usually a middle ground and a foreground. And traditionally, we would start with the background, then go to the middle ground and the foreground for an acrylic painting. That's what we're going to do today. You could rename this painting. I named it He is Risen. You could also name it The View from the Tomb, or you could name it His Story. I hope to touch on that today as we go step by step through this painting so that you get a clear picture of how to do it, and it will be a blessing to you, and it will also prepare your heart for this celebration of the death, burial, and resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ. Now, to begin, since this is already covered with gesso, it's already ready to go, we are going to slightly pencil in a tomb window. So I'm going to grab a pencil here. Most of the time you're going to see my canvas, not me. If you're trying to determine what kind of pencil to use your lightest one. in my repertoire of pencils, I would use a 4H pencil, which would be a very, very light, because the paints, unless you double coat, very difficult to go over pencil marks, so you do it very lightly. Here's my window. It's just an arch top, and it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be very stony, crooked, not perfect. And then I'm going to bring this window down further than I had it before. So the main part of my painting is going to be in the inside. We're going to start with some very light colors, and I will pause the video. You can pause the video while you're mixing paints to save on time. Then start it back up again. But the first color that we're going to mix together would be a very light blue. You can use a sky blue, what we call cerulean blue. You can use a regular cobalt blue. Anything blue you have, I would add white to it, possibly a little bit of yellow or green, to make it more of a sky blue. But the main idea here is your sky is very faded up high, and you want to go with a very light color of blue. So I'll pause the video in order to mix the paint. This is my light blue. There's my blue from the container I have, white. Now I mixed it together, and I have a very, very light blue, and that's about the color that you're going to need. For the top fourth of your window, it's not going to go, I would say maybe even a fifth. That's not going to go that far. After you cover the edges, and edges are so important in painting. Some are soft, some are hard. These are going to be hard on the outside, but then when I make my strokes, I'm going to go horizontal and full length of the opening. And sometimes you're going to need a little bit of water with acrylics, but it's important not to overdo with the water and make it drippy. I usually keep a rag beside my paints so that I can just blot my wet brush on the rag so that my paints are not going to be drippy. So I already have a white background here with the gesso. I'm not going to make it real thick. I'm going to keep my coverage very light because I want to give the appearance of that blue sky in the background. And I notice my horizontal strokes. If I go outside of my tomb window boundaries, that's okay, because we're going to go back and change the edge of that tomb wall later. Just keep it nice, even. Try to keep the horizontal strokes in limits. And we're going to blend all these colors back to back. So it's important that they stay wet while you do the sky and don't dry prematurely. Now we're going to need a very light pink. So I'm going to stop the video, mix the pink. That's what I'd like you to do, and then we'll add pink to our sky. Here's my pink. Do you notice my palette is clear? It doesn't have a background to it. Helps me to see the colors a little bit more clear. It's a very light pink mixed with pink and white that I have on my palette. And then I'm going to go right underneath that blue, blend it with the blue as I go downward. Slightly go over the lines. We're going to come back and take care of that. It's lighter as we go, but you don't want a definite line between that pink and that blue, so you're going to go back, mix it a little bit together, and you're going to get somewhat of a purple. The gradation of color is gradual. It should be gradual. Now, underneath the pink, we have a phenomena. If you check your reference, we have orange or golden color behind the crosses. but we also have bright yellow white where the sunset is. So I'm going to mix my orange color, which is a combination of red and yellow. If you already have orange mixed together, you could add some white to it. If you ever want to dull a color, all you have to do is add the opposite on the color wheel. And that's what you might have to do with your orange to make it nice and dull. This is my orange. Added orange and white together to make a very light color. I'm going to blend it underneath the pink on the right side, but I'm going to also leave some space to mix some yellow in there later. Go slightly over the pink. Now when I'm stroking this, since I'm not covering the entire space underneath the blue and the pink, as I pull my brush towards me, I'm gradually lifting it off of the canvas so that it doesn't cover the entire space. And I want to go down as far as the hill is going to go up. If you see white streaks, that's okay. We're going to put some clouds in later. And oftentimes with the sunset, you're going to see different colors within the colors that you post. Now I'm going to mix up with some yellow and white in order to do the other side of that sky. Here's my yellow. It's a light yellow, but it still has a lot of pigment in it because we don't want it as light as the sun is actually going to be. We're going to place it in later. So I'm going to do the same thing with yellow on one side that I did the other side with the orange. I'm going to start the left side. I'm going to work that way, and as I pull my brush, I'm going to pull it off of the canvas so that it just gradually mixes with the orange. Sometimes you have to load your brush again if you don't have enough paint on the first one. I'm going to go all the way down to where that sun is going to be. Pretty much there. Actually lower than the hill where the sunshine is. If I see any empty spots, I'm going to go over that again. And I'm actually going to bring some of that yellow up into the pink and the blue up here. To make a successful sunset, you want to spread your colors throughout. Now, I'm going to take a little bit of that yellow with a small round brush and make a sun where I want the sunset to be. A filbert works fine, or a round brush whenever you're doing a circular motion or soft edges. Now I'm also going to use my pointer finger to spread the sunshine around my sunset. This is mostly white, just a little tad of yellow, because it's going to mix with the yellow behind it. You never want to use white by itself or black by itself. They're not colors. White and black are not colors. Now, white is a wonderful tint and black is a wonderful shade, and you can do that, but it's best not to use too much of either in a painting or otherwise. Now, I'm going to put that sunset where I want it, which is round. My white is going to mix with the colors behind it somewhat. As your sunset might be half there, mine is full. I'm making a completely round ball. And I'm going to take my finger and I'm going to go around that for a shine. a circular motion. Now, we may have to go back and put a second coat on that sun later, but right now it's sufficient. In the meantime, take your white and your yellow together. I think I need a little bit more yellow on my palette because we're going to do some sunshine on around the edge of the walls of the tomb while we have that color available and wet. I added some yellow. Now, you can easily overdo here. Whenever you're adding color to these tomb walls, you want to start with your light around the edges and then gradually add lighter browns until you add the darkest in the corners, the very outset of the walls. There's going to be some reddish glow in there as well, but right now I'm going to blot this color around my window, and I'll show you how to give the appearance of the walls glowing in just a moment. I'm putting that glow around the whole window. Can you see that all right? I hope. Do you hear the sheep in the background? Yesterday I tried to do this, and the air compressor and the saw was running. I showed the video to my husband and he just laughed. So we thought, I'll try this again. I think it's good that I do it on canvas anyhow, because I had done my one on slate yesterday, and it was, not everybody has slate available to them, but I hope it gives you a good example. If you do have some slate, or if you do have some wood laying around, you're not limited to a canvas. I enjoy painting on wood slab as well. If you are into country decor, rustic, it works nice. Even, I'm putting this yellow white in on the bottom here. I don't have my hill in, I don't have my crosses in obviously, but I'm working at the sunshine around the tomb walls. Now that's your basic color. And we're gonna do some streaks later, but we have to get that dark color on first in order to make the streaks that make it look like stone. Now, do you have your yellow and your white all around your walls? We're gonna mix up some brown. Now brown is an easy color to make if you don't have it. You can put red, yellow, and blue together, make a nice rich brown. If you put more yellow, you're going to get a sandy brown. If you put more red, you're going to get a reddish brown. My brown, I want at least two values. I want a light brown here where the sun is going to shine, and I want a dark brown here. Of course, I can blend those together and I'll probably end up with 3 different values, although we usually think of a silhouette as 1. We're going to make it 3 to add depth and expertise, what would you call it, to make it look more real. Now, I can use the colors on my palette in order to form brown, but it might be a little light, so if I need to add black, I can make a darker brown. Maybe I should do that in front of you so you can see. My colors are basically light that I already have here. And I know I'm probably not going to use most of these again, so I'm going to put some pink and blue together, and I don't have enough yellow, so I'm going to have to add that. Remember, your primary colors are red, blue, and yellow. Put those together and you get a nice brown. too much yellow and blue, you're going to end up with a green color, so you have to add red. And I do have a container of red open here. Why didn't I open it? Did. Okay, here's my red. Nope, that's my pink. The lighting has been difficult here, just to get the right color shine in here. I'm going to turn off the camera and come right back. This is my light brown color. I added some red to my yellow and blue, and I got a nice light brown. This would be perfect for underneath the sun. So I'm going to place that on. Then I'm going to turn that brown into a darker brown for the hill. Now, this edge, I don't want to be a hard edge. I'm going back and forth with my strokes. So I'm going to add some sunshine to that in just a minute. But I want to get my darker brown in there, so I'm going to add a little bit of black to my brown to make it darker. See, all of my lighter colors had white to them, so it didn't give you a clear, rich brown. But in order to use up your paints, you can definitely mix those red, blue, and yellow together, add a little bit of black, and you've got a darker brown on this side. Now my hill, I want to go up this way, coming from the side. I'm covering up my pencil line so the darker color does a better job of it than the yellow. And my strokes are going horizontal. Placing most of my paint on the canvas there. Now I have a light brown on the left side and a dark brown on the right side. I really want three values by blending the light and the dark together, so I'm going to go between them with the light and the dark color. And I think it's going to be too dark, so I'm going to add a little bit of glow, yellow, let's see, back in my yellow, and some orange, and maybe a little bit of white there, keep it light, and I'm going to go across where my sun is. Ooh, it's not dry yet. I don't want to see those streaks, so I definitely want to keep the light color extended as far as the sun would be shining. Up the mountain gradually. Bring the strokes down like this into your dark. There we go. I'm happier with that color. Now I might have to go back, put another coat on the dark brown so I don't see brush marks. What I want to see is value. I don't want to see brush marks here. You can do a lot with brush marks if you're doing a different kind of painting. But my goal here is not to reveal brush marks in my silhouette. I want to see a solid color. Van Gogh, I guess, was pretty famous for his brush marks. Different paintings he did. And you can express a lot, and show movement and movement is an element of painting, element of art. That's important. Now, I hope you're happy with yours. To make this edge soft instead of hard. I wanted this edge hard up here. I wanted this edge to be soft. So I'm going to take my finger while the paint is still wet, and I'm going to just gradually run my finger where the sun is shining closest. Little bit make a little bit more light to that. And I might even come back, put a little bit more yellow and orange on to make a glow on the hill. Now, while we have that brown available, you add some red or orange to your brown, and we'll do some of the stonework outside the glow of the walls. I'm going to save the crosses for last. We want that to be our focal point. We don't want the paints to run with the background. So I'm adding a little bit of red to my brown, so I get kind of a reddish brown. And actually you need 3 values. When you're doing a color and you want reality, you want 3D look, you want 3 different values. I'm going to place maybe a little stone shape. It's very simple, but keep my strokes different spots, but not uniform. Keep away from uniformity, not directly across from one another, but, and I don't want it a definite line where that glow is. I may have to go back with a smaller brush to make it look a little bit on the streaky side. Now I'm just kind of alter my stones here. A few streaks in there to connect it to the yellow and the white. That's kind of a reddish brown. I'm also going to do more of a gray brown to represent the stone, but I wanted a variation of color here. Some places you may want to bring that reddish brown closer to the yellow white in order to gradually go to your dark gray color. Because remember, it's going to get darker and darker as you go outward. Bring down that reddish color, and you're going to mix it with some gray in different places. Now I'm going to go above this. I think you're going to see some of this stone above your window. And bring down my color, kind of mixes with that yellow white. We're going to add some gray here, maybe a dark gray. By the time it gets to the edge, it's going to be pretty black. The shadows caused from the lighting. Trying to get it to where you can see everything. Okay, so pretty much I have this reddish brown all the way around the yellow, but I also have some stones made out of that color to offset other colors that we're going to go into. I'm going to extend this all the way rather than try to block it off. Now, if you're thinking about not framing this, this is the time where you would extend your color to the edges of your canvas. Just go ahead and continue with the same color that you have on the edge. Okay, that's pretty red. So I want some brown that's not so red. I'm going to add some black to this color here, to the brown. I have a little different hue, less intensity, and I'm going to block in some stone connected to these, maybe one above, one below. A little bit of water, but remember to blot your brush And you can actually do this with a larger brush to make it go quicker. You know, Bob Ross is famous for that. He uses larger brushes for larger surfaces. Faster coverage. Isn't it amazing how he can do a huge, beautiful painting in just an hour? And the reason being, he uses the right brushes for the right things. He can make it go so quickly. So there's a stone there. I'm going to keep my strokes horizontal into the yellow somewhat. Now let's go down here, or maybe above there. Pull it this way. Ooh, I got a little bit more water, so I'm going to blot it on my rag. Need to refill my brush again. It's getting pretty thin. So, before I mix up more paint, I'm going to get rid of some color down here off of my brush. I'm going to mix up some more paint. Remember, we talked about different values for one thing. Now I've mixed up 3 different browns here. A very dark brown mixed with black. And that's what I'm going to put on the corners. And then this is a gray type of brown. This is a reddish brown. I'm going to start with this darker color. Ooh, I got the lighter color on there. Let's start with the medium color here and get some of that off my brush. I'm going to go below some of these stones, extend them outward. Don't forget the side of your canvas. Put some stones here. Just space them. Leave more room for more values. There's some spots that I barely got with the gray before, so I'm going to put some dark brown in there. Don't want it to look watery. I want it to look real. You can mix some of that too. You can blend. I'm going to leave some space between this hues so that we're not stuck with one. I'm going to extend that a little further so it's not. Okay. Now I'm going to come back, mix with black. I'm going to make sure I get the corners very dark. I'm going to extend that on both sides. I want to avoid any white because that's going to interfere with your contrast that you want. So if you have some white streaks in there, make sure you cover it up with paint. Okay. You can go over some of that with the red and get a different hue. Okay. Now, dark on bottom. To move this brush out of the way so you can see the dark color on the bottom. Corners, especially the corners. You still want to give the appearance of being able to see the stone. And whenever you're concerned about, oh, am I doing this right? Is it looking right? Go back to your reference. Look at your reference and see if there's any distinctions that you could make to keep it looking the way you want it to look. Now I'm going to go to my lighter brown color and I'm going to fill in some of the empty spots. try to keep my flat, large brush even to the point where it doesn't resemble a curve, but I keep my lines nice and straight and horizontal as it mixes in with other colors. There we go. We definitely don't want white stones where it should be dark. So I'm going to go in here to the bottom and make sure I fill in some of those empty spots, the white spots with the lighter color. Okay, now you should have a nice variation there, but I'm going to go along the side of my canvas and make sure it's completely covered so when it dries, I won't have any empty spots there either. It's going to be kind of hard for you to see. Now in order to make that, if you haven't extended the color all the way, you can use one color, but it would be best to vary it with the colors that you used before. Put some lighter there, lighter here. Of course, if you're using wood or slate, you're going to have to be concerned with all this, the variations of the stone and the color and all that, because your slate has those variations in it already. Okay, I'm going to take a smaller brush now because I want that window to shine, but it won't look like it's shining unless the yellow and white is more in streaks. So I'm going to rinse my brush, take a smaller brush. Actually, my smallest one, I like these liner brushes. Nice and tiny, and when I roll, I'm going to do some dark color here. I roll my brush, especially the liner brush. It makes a nice fine point, and then I can get some detail where I haven't had detail before, like places in that stone that need some cracks of light shining through, but not totally shining. So I'm taking the liner brush with some simple strokes and adding detail, connecting it to the stone. See, the place where the light is already stone, but it's shining due to the sunset. So you don't want to give the appearance that it's just yellow and white. You want to make sure it looks like it's stone. Back and forth strokes, left to right, will give that. Your darkest part will be outward. You want your lightest part inward. I hope this is making sense to everybody. Moms, if your child is getting tired by now and they need a break, it's a good time to stop the video, come back to it later, and add your details. We won't add our crosses until the very end. I'm taking some of the regular brown, I'm taking some of the darker brown, but I'm making these streaks to connect it all. Let's go with some lighter brown over here in place of the darker brown. The lighter you press on a liner brush, the thinner your line is going to be. If you press too hard, it's not going to come out nice and thin. You're going to end up with a very fat line, even with a very skinny brush. So it's how you press the brush on the canvas that creates the lighter line. I'm putting in some lighter color now to connect with my lighter stone. And just a little bit of here and there will give the appearance that it's not perfectly engineered. You want, this is a stone from the 1st century. So, probably hand hewn, no machines, and this stone is not going to be perfect. You don't want to give that appearance that it is. I think that's the hardest thing for organized people is being unorganized in a painting or allowing for reality, because most things are not perfectly symmetrical or able to be perfectly in line. These lines are all going to be different. Some are going to be fat, some are going to be skinny. We're just trying to tie them all together so that you keep your focal point on the crosses. It's telling you about the background of a painting. Background is usually what you do first in a traditional painting. And I have a little bit of a background. I've never shared my story before to the ladies and the people that I've had classes with. So I want to give you a little bit of my background. I grew up out west, and I say out west because I lived 26 different places in 26 years. But I never felt it was a hindrance to my life. I enjoyed my family. I loved my family. Although my father was an agnostic. At the end of the story changes, but I won't go there right now. My mother was a Christian and was not really close to the Lord when she married my father. It wasn't too long, though, after they married that she realized, boy, I shouldn't have married somebody that was not a Christian, because most of her time, I believe, for her children, for her family, was spent in prayer, praying that God would change the heart of my father. And he did, later on. But while I was growing up, I did not have the benefit of a Christian home. But my mom made sure that we got to go to church. She insisted upon it, even though my dad didn't want her to go. And I am so glad that I was able to learn the Bible stories and learn about God and learn about what Jesus did for me on the cross. My dad was a strict disciplinarian, and that really benefited me in life later on. But as I heard the stories, I got this impression in my mind that as long as I was a good kid, I could go to heaven. I didn't feel like anything else was necessary. Even though I'd heard the Bible stories, I heard about Jesus dying on the cross, but it didn't make sense. Why would he die? I can go to heaven just because I'm a good person. Well, one day in Sunday school in Tucumcari, New Mexico, my Sunday school teacher named Lily Mayhill went through the gospel with me. In fact, all the girls that were sitting there that day, I'm sure some of them knew more about it than I did, but for the first time in my life, I understood that my good works would not merit my way to heaven, and I could not get to heaven by being a good person. I was a depraved sinner, born into sin, that needed salvation. I believe the Holy Spirit just grabbed a hold of my heart. Sorry to say I didn't listen very well that day, and when Sunday school was over, after she shared Romans 3:23, all have sinned and come short of the glory of God, and there's none righteous, no, not one. And then Romans 6:23, for the wages of sin is death. Oh my goodness, I never heard these verses before. I probably had, but they probably didn't click. Well, I ran. I hit the door. I'm not gonna. Why does somebody have to tell me now that I'm not okay? But I could not get away from the scriptures. I could not get away from the Holy Spirit working in my life. And as I thought about those scriptures that night, I realized I was a sinner. I was lost. I needed Christ. 14 years old, 1976, I got out of bed. I got on my knees. I trusted Jesus to be my Savior. Well, that's my background, my story. Middle ground was a very interesting life with a wonderful Christian husband and 8 children. The oldest now is 33, the youngest is 18. My goal now, as it has been for many years, is just to honor God with my life and do whatever He wants me to accomplish in this life that I have to live the rest of the time. Well, let's add our crosses, shall we? If you have a palette knife, this is a perfect idea. Perfect time to use your palette knife to scratch out where you want those crosses so that you don't make the blunder of placing them where you don't want them. I'm going to scratch out mine. I'm going to put the cross of Christ, which we symbolize as the middle one, a smaller one to the right side as one for the thief. And so I've added my 3 crosses. After I scratched those in, I took my liner brush, rolled the brush again, just like we did with the streaks around the window, and I placed my 3 crosses on the hill. And we are finished with our He is Risen painting. Any questions, comments? Let me know. Thank you. Bye-bye.